You've got to become the leader. You've got to become the captain. And you've got to let her relax into her feminine and be your executive officer, right? So the husband must focus on self-improvement and rebuilding his sexual market value. That's number one. I heard this comment the other day because I mentioned how I'm not a big fan of attachment theory, right? And this guy on TikTok, some other red pill guy, I don't know, he had a red pill name. He even had red pill in his name. So he's really red pilled. But he's actually said something really good. He said, he goes, people who are anxiously attached are always the one that has the lower sexual market value in the relationship. So if you build yourself up to where you have the higher sexual market value, so you have a higher S&B than your wife, like she's going to start feeling that anxious attachment shit, right? That's the whole idea of dread. And how do you do that? How do you increase your S&B? Well, you're going to want to embrace fitness first, right? Fitness. You're going to start developing some hobbies outside of the relationship, some stuff that you're passionate about, things that you like doing. You're going to have goals that align with your personal vision, and you're going to create a natural dread effect, right? This is where we talk about passive dread. It's where passive dread is where you're not actively trying to tell your wife, like, hey, by the way, 5 girls hit on me today. You know what I mean? Like you're just naturally working on your attractiveness, and that's both physical and your demeanor and how you carry yourself. And then you start becoming more social, you start becoming more active, you start being busy outside the relationship. You know what I mean? Like you don't give your girl all your time and attention anymore. Now you're not taking yourself for granted anymore. You're going out and doing stuff for you. And the thing is that when you do this kind of stuff, you naturally become a more attractive person that other people start to notice. Well, your wife will notice other people talking with you, and that gives you social proof. But when women specifically are like laughing at your dumb jokes and sort of making eyes at you and all this kind of stuff, your wife notices that stuff too, and she's like, holy cow, like he has options. I got myself a catch here. I better start doing something about it, right? The hamster starts running the maze. You've got to have outcome independence, right? You got to develop the mindset of outcome independence, not being dependent on the wife's reactions or approval. Another thing you've got to do with this outcome independence is be okay with dread not working on your wife, right? Dread's going to work. It just might not be effective at getting your wife to come around. You know what I mean? One thing, Athol K says in the Married Man Sex Life Primer, which I draw a lot of Married Man Sex Life Primer in my new book, Get Her to Fuck You Again, because it's a proven method. It's like the map is a proven method to change the dynamic in your relationship. There's no reason to discard it. So I used it. Athol gets all the credit in my book for that. And, but I also incorporated like a lot of other information from other material, like a lot of No More Mr. Nice Guy in there, a lot of When I Say No, I Feel Guilty in there, like a lot of Rational Male in there, a lot of Corey Wayne, 3% Man, a lot of Atomic Attraction, all that kind of stuff, a lot of Practical Female Psychology, all that kind of stuff's in my book, right? But one of the things that Athol says is that basically he's like, I can guarantee that you'll end up in a loving relationship with lots of sex. I just can't guarantee that it will be with your wife, right? So you've got to let go of that outcome attachment that, hey, I'm turning my wife around. Like you're doing this for you. You're doing this to increase your sexual market value. And she either gets on board or she doesn't. You've got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with her not getting on board. Okay. Because otherwise what you're doing is you're doing this as a covert contract. You're doing this to try to get your wife to react in a specific way. And when she doesn't, that's going to build resentment. So you got to let that go. You got to be okay with it not working. But the thing is, the magic is that when you let go of that attachment, you stop being so needy, right? You stop seeking her validation. You're just doing this stuff and with this, I don't give a shit if she comes on board or she doesn't attitude. And the magic is that she's more likely to come on board because that's more attractive behavior, right? It's the same thing when you're out on the dating circuit, letting go of that attachment to outcome When you go into a date and just treat it like a science experiment, and you're not trying to get a girl to sleep with you, you're not trying to make a girl your girlfriend. You're just going there to facilitate fun and fuck, and that's your only job. And if you see if you like her or not, if you don't like her, okay, that's okay too, right? You're just collecting data. When you let go of that attachment to outcome, you become more of an attractive guy that women want to be with, because you're not being needy, right? But a lot of guys are going into every interaction trying to make every girl like them, trying to lock every girl down as their girlfriend, and it pushes women away. And then they're like, I don't understand what's not working. Well, it works the same in your relationship too. It works the same in your relationship too. So you got to let go of that outcome attachment. You want to focus on being a man of value rather than seeking validation from her. Ryan Stone says it really well in Dread. If you want your wife to fuck you more, you've got to become more fuckable, right? Another solution is you got to learn how to establish boundaries. Okay. You've got to learn how to establish and enforce boundaries. Gently but firmly enforce boundaries to shift the dynamic from a captain wife to a captain executive officer, right? And how do you do that? Well, phenomenal book. A much read. I highly recommend you guys read this book, is When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. Bar none, best book on this. Okay. He teaches tools like fogging, right? Well, what's fogging? Fogging is like, let's say if someone criticizes you by saying, you're always late, right? You respond with, you basically, what you're trying to do is trying to find some kind of truth in their statement and then agree with it, right? It's almost like agree and amplify without the amplify. So you go, yeah, you're right. I can see how it might seem like I'm late. You know, I'm late pretty frequently. I can see why you would say that, you know? Right. You want to learn tools like negative inquiry. Right. Well, what's negative inquiry? Right. So let's say your wife is bitching at you about like not doing the dishes right. Well, you ask her a question. You go, well, you say I'm not doing the dishes right. Well, can you tell me specifically what about the dishes that I'm not doing right, so I can make sure I get it done right? You know, like instead of her just like blanket statement, you go, well, what specifically am I not doing that makes you so mad? Right. That's negative inquiry. Another one they talk about in the book is negative assertion. It's when you acknowledge a negative aspect of their behavior. It's very similar to fogging, right? It's very similar to fogging. And then amused mastery. Amused mastery is a good way. Amused mastery, I find that when you're handling shit tests, there's basically two ways I tell guys to do it, right? Agree and amplify. That's where you agree with what they're saying, and then you take it up a notch and make it absurd. And then act indifferent, right? Just, you know, like your wife, you're driving somewhere and your wife's like, do you know where you're going? You just go, yep. Right? Like that's acting indifferent, right? The thing is that when you start seeing your wife's shit test, you start seeing this behavior from her, and you stop reacting emotionally and start seeing it for what it is. It becomes sort of funny to you, right? Especially if your sort of go-to is the agree and amplify, and because that causes, you know, sexual tension when you're able to tease her a little bit with the agree and amplify stuff. When you start seeing that and you're not taking what she says seriously anymore, you almost think your wife's cute and adorable for being, you know, kind of having a little bit of an attitude, right? And so that naturally develops this amused mastery. And what's amused mastery? It's sort of like the idea that you've seen it all before, right? So you're like, you don't take it seriously because you're like, it's cute, right? Like your wife's being adorable when she's mad. But if you learn those tools, and learn how to better establish boundaries. Another one is broken record. Broken record is phenomenal when it comes to like really enforcing a boundary, you know, and that's where you just repeat the same thing over and over again until your wife says, fine, fine. All right, we'll do it your way. And then finally, creating genuine desire. Creating genuine desire is a solution to this, right? So how do you do that? Well, you aim, that's the aim. That's the goal. You want to ignite your wife's genuine desire. right? And that's the way you do that is you have to increase your sexual market value to a place where she thinks that you're her best hypergamous option. Once she starts seeing you as her best hypergamous option again, that's when she wants to like have sex with you for validation, right? It makes her feel good knowing that she's able to have sex with her best hypergamous option. That's validational sex, right? That's a reward for her. So you want to aim for raw, genuine desire, and that you do that by increasing your sexual market value through consistent self-improvement, right? And I think, MLD, John MLD, he really simplified it to the core four, right? Muscles, money, game, and frame. You got to have all four to be her best hypergamous option, right? And I say it all the time, like your money, that's the beta side of hypergamy, but in a long-term relationship, you need to sprinkle a little beta on it. So that's the beta, being able to take care of her. You want to basically instill passive dread, right? You instill passive dread by focusing on authentic growth that shifts the relationship balance. You've got to make this stuff a part of who you are at the end of the day.
New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe now.